Hello everybody, my name is Will and welcome back to Sprocket. Today, quad tracks. Quad tracks, I have been asked so many times to do quad tracks, and once again, our absolute lord and savior Aku in the Sprocket official Discord has delivered. This is the same person as who did the blueprint that I used for my hydro-pneumatic suspension, so definitely give them a big thumbs up. And you can find their threads on the official Discord as well if you want to download these and have a go for yourself. But for now, we're not concerned with that. All we really care about is building a tank with this, and unfortunately, as you can see, while the road wheels do work for both sets of tracks, only the front set of tracks actually moves and animates, so we could have difficulty making a tank that looks particularly good when it's moving, but we're gonna give it a go anyway because it's cool! So, we are building our quad-tracked tank. Now, luckily for me, one of the big things that I can do when it comes to building a quad-tracked tank is I can say it's pretty much not gonna look like anything that's ever been built, because nobody has ever built a quad-track tank in this format properly. There's been a couple of prototypes here and there, as with when you have the two tracks side by side with each other, but obviously the T95 kind of almost made it into production a little bit further than like the Object 279. I don't know. I don't really know what we class as like being built. People have tried quad tracks. It's not very practical. There's a reason most tanks have a single set of tracks, and it's just because what do you really gain from having two sets of tracks, really? I mean, slightly better ground pressure if you put them side by side without having the thick tracks, which means, I guess, easier production and transportation of spare parts, maybe, but then you got to pull the whole track assembly of the outside tracks off if you want to replace a track segment on the inside track. No, not a very good idea. And then with this arrangement, it's even worse because you've got two drivetrains, you've got to link up, you've now got less ground pressure because there's a gap between the two, and if you just didn't put a gap, there wouldn't be as much ground pressure. I guess you could have separate suspension for the whole segment could have its own, but then tanks don't exactly struggle for suspension, and I guess you could articulate between the two, but that's tanks already have a method of steering that works pretty well. Why would we need to articulate between the two? And then, yeah, no, it's not a very good idea. But regardless, we don't care about those kind of practical limitations because we're building something absolutely ridiculous. And I kind of intended this to look a bit like an American Heavy. If you've ever seen, I think it's the AE prototype, A stage, maybe? A phase, that's the one. A phase 1, which is a tank in World of Tanks Blitz. Completely and utterly false. They just made it up. And for the same reasons, I am now making up my own quad-track tank, but definitely taking a little bit of inspiration from the AE, because I think it's a really neat design. So we've kind of got a low-slung, low-ridden hull, and then a massive turret that covers the vast majority of the hull, to be entirely honest. Please, if any of you are any good at building in Sprocket, please don't bully me for this. I gave up trying to merge those back into single units because it was going to take forever. Just maybe not my best work there, but we don't worry about it, don't think about it, and it won't hurt you. So the hull for this thing is actually quite simple. All it needs to really do is give me a big old flat surface to put a stonking great turret on top, and then I raised the engine deck, not because I really wanted the look of a raised engine deck. I kind of actually didn't, but the problem is the engines weren't fitting, so I decided to increase the size of it, just, because why not? And then I put way too many grates on this, and then had to do the thing where you go back and you remove 50% of them, which was regrettable and took ages, and it kind of hurt me deep inside. And here you go. That's me doing that. That's that's the consequences of my actions there. So, right, what have I been up to? Well, I tell you what, there's been quite a lot of videos this week. Unfortunately, they weren't really on the usual content. I don't know why I say unfortunately. They're good videos. If you've not watched them, which it would seem that most of you haven't, I would recommend that after this one, you give them a try. They're not the usual content, but I'm really proud of them. They're quite good. And for that matter, speaking of usual content, if you guys want to force me physically to play that one game, Cursed Tank Simulator, that everyone wants me to play, then you do well to hit that subscribe button, because if we hit 35,000 subscribers at the end of the year, which is not very likely, but if we do it, I'll play it. And if we don't, then I'm gonna have to set you another goal, and you're gonna have to subscribe anyway. So you may as well just do it. You may as well just subscribe, because it honestly, it just makes both of our lives easier. And I am not growing very quickly right now. It'll make me feel a little bit better. You know what else will make me feel better? This tank, because quad tracks, yeah. I kind of wanted to go for a big old cast turret, kind of. I don't even know what to compare it to. Almost like an M60 or an M48 turret. Those kind of massive cast pieces that get formed into the turret. I don't know why. It's a really cool design that I really like, so I wanted to steal that and do my own, and then I kind of gave it a mullet, which is what's going on now. And then I spent the next 50 minutes of my life correcting these nodes which I created, because this was just awful, and I had to copy a bunch of stuff manually, and it was horrifying, but I kind of liked the vibe that I was getting, so I did it, and it took forever, and I think I cut out a fair amount of it. I believe this is pretty much after 10 minutes of fiddling with it already, and you can see me just manually making sure that these nodes are at the exact same point on both sides, because I messed up my symmetry so that then I could shape the turret a little bit more. Absolute mess. I'm sure some of you who've done a lot of cast stuff in the past are currently screaming at me to do it a completely different way, but I'm still not very good at cast hulls and cast turrets. It's something that I really need to work on, and this is probably about as good of experience as I could really hope for. You can see me here just pulling out a bunch of those faces that were clipped on the inside of this tank, and then removing them so that they don't mess up the geometry at a later point and end up with us glitching out when we spawn in, which happens sometimes. This version of the game also had, while I was building this, in between the 2 days where I was building this tank, we had the armor overlay simulations added back on. So similarly to how you kind of War Thunder, you can get a shell and you can shoot it at a tank and you can see what it would do. You can do the same in Sprocket now. I don't really show that off in this video, which is maybe a little bit of a miscalculation on my behalf, but it's pretty handy, because previously it was extremely hard to get an idea of how well your armor was gonna work, and to an extent that's still kind of the case, because there is a little bit of funkiness with how you set the thickness of your armor. So if you set your point to horizontal, for instance, but it's 200 millimeters thick, but it's actually facing backwards, you end up with a face that kind of appears to be 0 millimeters thick, because obviously all of the metal is going backwards rather than into the turret. That's kind of a problem I think I ran into with this one. I need to just kind of improve how I'm managing the armor thickness on these tanks if I want these designs to be seriously good. That does kind of bite us with this one, but unfortunately, and the reason that I didn't worry too much about it with this one, these tracks, given that the front one doesn't actually work to provide any movement force, turning is nigh impossible with this design, which is unfortunate, but also not particularly unexpected. This is, once again, file editing to make the game do things that it really is not supposed to do. So the fact that we can do this at all is quite impressive. I've also seen that Hamish not only is aware of this, but also is eager to allow people to do stuff like this, which is always good. This is what you like to see. You know, previously Hamish has come out, made an update, and been like, yeah, I want this game to be more about the process of designing a tank rather than 3D modeling a tank, which is fair, but then, you know, bugs left in, or not even bugs, just like file editing tricks that have been enabled by the way that the new file system for storing these tanks works in 0.2.0 aren't going to be patched out, because why would he? You know, it kind of makes sense. Just leave in the extra bits of creativity for those people who want to go the extra mile. It's not going to hurt the game, because people who, you know, don't know how to do it don't probably need to know what the trick to getting quad tracks is. And if we ever do get to a point where, you know, for instance, some person on YouTube makes a YouTube video and a bunch of people who don't know how to make quad tracks, you can always just either A, share a blueprint, which is how I downloaded this one, or B, it could then be added to a roadmap, and that kind of mitigates people's asking for it, because they know, hey, look, it's coming, it's just a long, long way down the line, because obviously there's far more important things to add to Sprocket than quad tracks, but quad tracks are cool. I'm sure at least one of you right now has seen this video and gone, man, I want to build a tank with quad tracks. And if you want to do that, obviously go to the Sprocket official Discord and find Aku's thread on how to do these things. There will be a link, as there always is, to the Sprocket official Discord in the description of this video. And you can, join there. And occasionally I am there in the general chat mostly. If you are in there, actually, I don't know why I don't do it in my Discord quite as often, but for some reason it's normally in the Sprocket official Discord. I tend to give people a little bit of a sneak peek of the video that I'm uploading. Not really to give people a sneak peek, more to get feedback on my tanks. There's a lot of very, very talented builders in the Sprocket official Discord, and sometimes they can just see something incredibly wrong with the way that you've been designing your tank, and they'll just be like, oh, why don't you just try making the turret like 10% bigger? And you're like, I didn't even think about it. And you do it, and it looks better. And so I normally, about a day before these videos go up, I tend to post a photo of the tank, and I am just kind of sitting there waiting for people to inevitably criticize my terrible work. To be fair, one thing that gives me confidence is less people criticize my tanks now than they did a long time ago. And going back to my old videos, you know, I can see why. There's definitely some flaws in the designs that I made in terms of just looking absolutely hideous. And I'm more happy with the things that I'm building now, even though it's not taking me particularly longer to build them. For instance, this thing is actually, it was quite a quick build, all things considered, compared to the last few tanks, and especially the last few flyout creations we had. This one relatively flew by. It's definitely not my best work ever, but I think overall the dimensions of it and the feel of it is pretty good. And this is something that I'm extremely outside of my comfort zone in building, these kind of cast turrets. So very, very proud of this one. But speaking of this one, it's about done, so we're going to go back to the gameplay, I guess. Okay, so here is the finished product. Now, unfortunately, while this thing I think looks pretty cool, functionality-wise, we are lacking just a little bit. The turning is pretty bad. The wheels seem to kind of be folding for some reason. I don't know why that is, and I don't know if there's a way to fix that, but yeah, I mean, so long as we get a bit of momentum first, we can turn. We have a big old 152mm gun, and for some reason it's not firing. Okay, there we go. We've worked out why it's not firing. Cool. Now we can demonstrate the 152mm gun, which I've just missed with. There's quite a long reload on it, because it's a 152mm gun. We penetrate almost 300mm of armor, I believe, but it's actually going to be quite... Okay, I take it back. I was about to say it's going to be quite hard to penetrate the front of this thing with only 300mm of penetration, but we bounced a shell off the floor and went clean through the floor of the tank. So, yeah, I mean, that would do it. That also might have gone through on the side there. Yeah, I think it did. and it looks like we might have taken it out with that shot, which isn't a huge surprise given the size of the gun that we're firing at them. I do wish I could fix this bending of the tracks, but unfortunately, this is very much not designed to work in the current version of Sprocket. But if we were to, pause the game and look at it like this, it looks pretty cool, if you ask me. Maybe? I guess we'll try and take on dunes with this thing. It's probably going to be quite difficult to make work. Okay, we're here at dunes, and hopefully we don't need to do too much moving, because that's really the big problem with this thing. In terms of actually killing things, we should be okay. They're probably not going to be able to kill me very easily. You never know. Sometimes you just leave a massive gaping flaw in your armor design, and they do kill you anyway. But let's just test our gun really quickly. Yep, I mean, that seems to have worked. I was kind of expecting a bigger explosion than that, to be entirely honest. Kind of anticlimactic. What about the, what if we attack the Allen there in the middle? He might go up in a little bit more spectacular fashion. There we go, that's the kind of thing we're looking for. Hopefully they add an easier way. I don't... Apparently you can get a king tiger on this level, but I don't know how to trigger it to spawn. So if you do know, let me know in the comments, because that would be handy for something like this, because this is comedic overkill. Hi. Oh, okay. That was slightly embarrassing, I can't lie. However, we have now remembered to armor our mantlet, and I also adjusted where it rotates from, so now it shouldn't look quite as weird when we're elevating and depressing, which helps. Previously it was kind of sticking out quite a lot. However, unfortunately, the elevation of this thing is insanely slow because it's an incredibly heavy gun. I don't want that to happen again, so we're going to take you out. There we go. And retreat into cover. I mean, I don't want to... I don't think they'll go through, but I don't want to put it up to chance. Okay, you are probably the most annoying, so I'm just going to... Yep, that should do him in. The size of these shell holes on these tiny little tanks is a little funny. I can't lie. You just wait. You just wait till I get my gun aimed. There we go. That looks like... Oh my gosh, he's still firing. I mean, honestly, credit to you. Let's see if we can not make the same mistake with this guy. No. Oh, I feel like that's worse. He's still moving. How am I so bad at aiming this gun? And can we hit? Oh, there's the Hennemore. Oh, we've exploded again. Wow. No. What? Clean through the side of the turret? That's not where I thought they'd be going through. Right. Okay. Yeah. It's not very practical. It's not a very good tank. That's 150 millimeters of armor. How the heck did they go through? Okay, whatever. It's not a very practical tank. But if you did enjoy this one nonetheless, please leave a like, comment, and or subscribe. And I hope to see you in the future for more stuff like this. So, for now, goodbye! And as always, a huge thank you to my YouTube super supporters, Paloma, Marlin Gwecken, Cruiser25, Cody Fox, Peter Holmes, Peter Seifert, Chemjam135, Stug3, and Terra. And a huge thank you to all the regular supporters too!